In January 1959, 9 young people set out on a journey they had trained for their entire lives. They were not reckless. They were not inexperienced. They were elite Soviet hikers, engineers, students, disciplined, prepared, and confident. Their destination was a remote mountain range in the northern Ural Mountains of Russia, a place so isolated that maps barely acknowledged it, a place the local Mansi people avoided, a place whose name meant something unsettling. Kholat Syakhl translated loosely, it meant dead mountain. But the group didn't believe in curses. They believed in preparation. The leader was Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student known for precision and calm leadership. Under his guidance, the group had already completed expeditions that most people would never attempt. This trip was supposed to be difficult, but achievable. A winter trek, Category 3 difficulty. Dangerous, yes. Deadly? Not if everything went according to plan. The group consisted of 8 men and 2 women, all in their early 20s. Strong, intelligent, trusted each other completely. On January 23rd, they boarded a train from Sverdlovsk. They laughed, they sang. They joked about the cold. Nothing in their expressions suggested fear. Nothing suggested this would be their final journey. Cameras captured them, smiling. Photos that would later become chilling, because these images would be the last proof that everything was still normal. After days of travel, they reached the final inhabited settlement. From there would be no help, no radio contact, no rescue, only wilderness. One member, Yuri Yudin, turned back due to illness. It saved his life. He would later say something that still haunts investigators. "If I had known what would happen, I would have begged them not to go." The remaining 9 continued forward. They skied deeper into the mountains. The temperature dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. Wind howled constantly. Visibility disappeared without warning. Still, nothing unusual happened. On February 1st, 1959, they made a decision that would later confuse experts for decades. Instead of descending to the forest for shelter, they pitched their tent on the slope of Kholat Syakhl itself. Not hidden, not protected, exposed. Why? No distress signal was sent. No sign of panic. Their final diary entry was calm. That night, something happened. Something so terrifying that 9 experienced hikers would abandon their tent, cut their way out from the inside, and run half-naked into a frozen wilderness. Without shoes, without coats, without explanation. But at this moment in the story, no one knew that yet. To the outside world, they were simply late. And in the Soviet Union, being late wasn't unusual. Until it was. By February 12, 1959, the group was overdue. At first, no one panicked. Winter expeditions often returned late. Weather delays were expected. Radio silence was normal. But the days kept passing. Families contacted the university. The university contacted local authorities. After mounting pressure, a search was finally approved. On February 20th, volunteer rescuers entered the northern Ural Mountains. Students, hunters, later Soviet military personnel. They followed the planned route of the hikers. For days, there was nothing. No broken skis, no abandoned equipment, no signs of distress. Then, on February 26th, something appeared on the slope of Kholat Syakhl. The tent. It was still standing, partially covered in snow, exactly where the group had camped. But something was wrong. The entrance was not used. The fabric had been cut, slashes from the inside. Inside the tent, everything was still there. Boots, heavy winter coats, food, money, personal documents. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing taken for survival. Outside the tent, footprints led away, not toward safety, but downhill, toward the forest. 9 separate tracks, some barefoot, some wearing socks, some missing shoes. There were no signs of a struggle. The footprints were spaced normally. Whatever made them leave did not cause chaos. Nearly a mile away, at the edge of the forest, searchers found the first bodies. 2 of the hikers lay beneath a tall cedar tree. They were wearing almost nothing. No shoes, no winter gear. The branches above them were broken, high above the ground, as if someone had climbed the tree. Between the forest and the tent, 3 more bodies were discovered. Spread across the slope, their position suggested one thing. They were trying to go back. Back to the tent, back to shelter, back to life. 4 members of the group were still missing. By now, hope was gone. The mountain had taken its first answers and left only questions behind. The search did not end with the first 5 bodies. Weeks passed. Snow continued to fall. Temperatures stayed deadly. 4 members of the group were still missing. It wasn't until May, when the snow began to melt, that searchers made another discovery. Deeper in the forest, inside a ravine, hidden beneath several feet of snow. What they found changed the entire case. The remaining 4 bodies were discovered together, better dressed, wearing multiple layers, some wearing clothes that did not belong to them. Clothes taken from the dead, but the clothing wasn't the most disturbing detail. The injuries were: one hiker had a crushed skull, another had massive chest injuries, ribs shattered inward. The force required was comparable to a high-speed car crash, yet there were no external wounds, no cuts, no bruises, no signs of a fight. One woman was missing her tongue. Her eyes were gone, soft tissue missing. Investigators would later claim scavenging animals were responsible, but the explanation never fully satisfied anyone. There were no defensive wounds, no broken branches, no blood trail. Nothing matched the violence of the injuries. Even more unsettling, traces of radiation were found on some of the clothing. Not background radiation, elevated levels. The official investigation struggled to keep control of the narrative. Explanations shifted. Reports contradicted earlier findings. Avalanche military testing, infrasound katabatic winds, unknown natural force. None explained everything. Not the tent, not the calm footprints, not the internal trauma, not the radiation. By late May, the investigation concluded. Cause of death: compelling natural force. No further explanation. The case was closed. Families were given answers that were not answers. Documents were sealed. Photographs disappeared. The mountain kept its secret, and the Soviet Union moved on. But decades later, the questions never did. After the bodies were recovered, the Soviet investigation had a problem. The evidence didn't point in one direction. It pointed in too many. So officials began offering explanations. The first was simple: hypothermia. And for some of the hikers, that was true. They had died from exposure. But hypothermia does not explain crushed skulls. It does not shatter ribs inward. It does not cause people to cut their way out of tents and flee into the dark. Then came the avalanche theory. An avalanche could explain panic. It could explain abandoning the tent. But the slope angle was wrong. The tent was still standing. There was no avalanche debris. No damage consistent with a large snowslide. Experts later confirmed an avalanche was unlikely. Another explanation followed: military testing. The region was known for weapons experiments. Locals reported seeing glowing orbs in the sky that same night. Search teams later described similar lights. But there were no blast marks, no burns, no shrapnel, no official records of tests in that area. Then there was infrasound, a rare wind phenomenon that can cause anxiety and panic. It could explain fear, but not physical trauma. Not radiation, not missing organs. One by one, explanations collapsed. Even the investigation's final conclusion avoided clarity. The cause of death was ruled as a compelling natural force. No definition, no details, no follow-up. Shortly after, the case files were classified. Access was restricted. Photographs were removed. Witnesses were silenced. Families were told to stop asking questions. In the Soviet Union, that was the end of the story. But outside official reports, the facts still didn't align. And when answers don't fit evidence, suspicion fills the space.
When official answers failed, others stepped in to fill the silence. Over the decades, the Dyatlov Pass incident became something more than a case. It became a question people refused to stop asking. Some believe the hikers triggered a small, delayed snowslide, not a full avalanche, but enough to create pressure, enough to frighten them out of the tent. Modern simulations suggest this is possible, but even these models admit limits. They cannot explain the internal injuries. They cannot explain the radiation. They cannot explain the missing organs. Another theory points to military involvement. secret weapons tests, experimental explosives. Accidental exposure. Supporters of this theory cite glowing lights in the sky, restricted files, unusual levels of radiation. But again, there is no physical evidence. No blast damage, no official confirmation. Then there are the locals. The Mansi people lived near the area. Some early reports suggested conflict, but investigations found no signs of violence. The Mansi had no motive, no history of aggression. They helped with the search. That theory quietly faded. Others focus on psychological explanations. Infrasound. Extreme stress, sleep deprivation, disorientation. These could cause fear, even irrational behavior. But fear alone does not crush ribs. It does not fracture skulls. It does not remove tongues. As the years passed, stranger theories appeared. Creatures, visitors, unknown forces, but serious investigators returned to the same problem. No single theory explains everything. Every explanation answers one question and creates three more. And so the case remains suspended, balanced between science and uncertainty, between fact and speculation. Not solved, not forgotten. Decades have passed since that winter of 1959, yet Kholat Syakhl remains silent. The mountain does not speak. It does not reveal its truth. Every year, hikers, investigators, and thrill seekers come looking for answers. Some hope to find what was missed. Some come seeking closure. But the mountain does not give it freely. The Dyatlov Pass incident has inspired books, films, and endless debates. Scholars dissect every report. Conspiracy theorists weave their own stories. Some claim the hikers were victims of a natural anomaly. Others insist on secret military experiments. A few whisper of forces that cannot be named. Yet, despite all the speculation, one fact remains undeniable. 9 young lives were lost. And whatever drove them from their tent that night, whatever crushed their bodies and left their tracks in the snow, remains beyond explanation. Perhaps it was nature, perhaps it was man, perhaps it was something we do not yet understand. For those who study the case, the fascination is simple. It is the puzzle itself, the question that cannot be answered. And for the families, for the friends, and for history, it is a story that will not fade. Kholat Syakhl is still there, silent, cold, waiting, and it always will be. The mountain keeps its secret,